CTBK gives executives and owners of mid-market businesses unparalleled confidence and clarity so you can focus on strategic objectives and organizational success. Their multidisciplinary advisors, accountants, and team members have a wealth of experience and are all available and responsive to each client to ensure the most effective advice, actions, and outcomes no matter the situation or complexity level. That experience base and one-team approach, combined with integrated and efficient way of operating, enable them to be truly proactive partners, doing the best thing for their client every time. Visit ctbk.com or call 716-630-2400 to learn how CTBK can work for you.
Hi, this is Josh Reed, Sports Director at WIVB Channel 4 in Buffalo, and you are listening to the Tim Graham and Friends podcast.
What are you doing?
Tim's been bothering me to do this thing for his podcast. Sorry. I got to stop this, I guess.
It's Tim Graham and Friends, brought to you by CTBK, CPAs and Business Consultants. I'm Tim Graham of The Athletic, here with Jonah Bronstein of Bronstein Sports Plus. We're going to be joined later in the show by George Richards of Florida Hockey Now, friend of the show, longtime Panthers beat writer for the Miami Herald and for The Athletic. But he also covered the Columbus Blue Jackets at the Columbus Dispatch when Jarmo Kekalainen was the general manager there. And he's going to tell us his thoughts about Kekalainen, what kind of guy he is, what kind of hockey man he is, how he goes about his work, what his reputation is, and get some insights there on somebody who's actually covered the guy that the Sabres have just hired to be senior advisor to general manager Kevin Adams. So yeah, that'll be coming up a little bit later in the show. We have Bill's voluntary practices. I know that everybody calls them OTAs, but I also of the belief that people always stop for a second and have to wonder what OTAs are. Are those voluntary? Are those mandatory? The hardcore fan knows, but I think you always wonder, do they have to be there? So that's why I just call them voluntary practices. You don't have to call them OTAs, right? You don't have to brand and also, everything.
The workouts they've been doing for 6 to 8 weeks are not technically called OTAs, but they're also organized team activities. So it's
and they're voluntary. Yeah. So yeah, it's a voluntary workout. They don't have to be there. James Cook was not there, the only one. Josh Allen was there, and I found that newsworthy, obviously, by the fact that I wrote a story about it. I thought more people would write about that as a headline, that Josh Allen was there the week of his wedding, allegedly. Because we're not supposed to know that his wedding is May 31st, believed to be. But Deion Dawkins let it slip months ago. The guy who's supposed to protect Josh Allen at all costs blabbed too much and said May 31st.
I didn't even know Josh Allen was getting married. Is it a local girl? Western New Yorker?
Well, no, it's Haley Steinfeld from Sinners, the hit movie that just is breaking records despite the film industry being down. Could be an Oscar winner. She could win a statuette. What a year, huh? MVP of the National Football League. The brand new contract, Josh Allen, the most guarantees in NFL history, over $250 million in guarantees. Box office smash, getting married. I mean, the guy's got the world by the balls, right? But the reason I thought it was significant was just 3 years ago, this guy was missing voluntary practices to golf to take part in The Match, teamed with Patrick Mahomes in a made-for-TV competition against Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers. He missed 2 practices for that. And here he was the week of his wedding when any of his teammates would have looked and said, absolutely does not need to be here. 3rd year of Joe Brady as offensive coordinator, same head coach the entire run of his career. Since Josh Allen's been here, the continuity is off the charts. But there he was on the field with his teammates. I thought that was it was a big statement as such. That's why I wrote about it. So check out that column at The Athletic.
I got a chuckle with a number of people we work with on the Bills beat, younger men who've gotten married in recent years, and they were saying, wow, Josh Allen's here in the week of his wedding, we believe. I mean, that's a very busy week. He's got to do this with the flowers and that with the music and the tuxedos. And I'm thinking, it's not like your wedding, buddy. Josh Allen doesn't have the same responsibilities in the wedding planning that you had when you got married at
a
Wanaka
staff
Country
was
Club.
hired to handle all those decisions for him. With somebody would bring him a piece of paper, send him an email to check some boxes, probably periodically. Maybe they put some thought into where people were going to sit. We don't even know how this is going to go, because maybe this is an elopement. Maybe it's going to be 10 people there. We don't know. That's kind of the point, is they've kept it secret, confidential. Some photos will probably be purchased by Vanity Fair. I don't know. I think this is even bigger than, say, People Magazine, right? This is like big time celebrity wedding that I don't think that Western New York is giving as much credit to, right? I mean, has the Buffalo News written stories about Josh Allen's wedding? I mean, Jim Kelly's marriage to local girl was a massive story. I've seen some of those clips before. That Josh Allen, this is a worldwide interest, that the reigning NFL MVP is marrying this movie star. She's already been nominated for an Oscar. She was nominated for an Oscar in True Grit. And now she's in the biggest box office smash of the year. I don't know. I thought it was a big story. I thought that it was significant. And I think he deserved credit for being there, because this was and I use that phrase as I do a lot, because Bills fans call him their golden retriever quarterback, the big goof who's just going out there living life and trying to be as happy as he can be and make everybody around him happy. Well, this is the guy who just 3 years ago missed 2 practices to be in a golf event, had nothing to do with his team or team. Oh, by the way, that was Ken Dorsey's first time as a offensive coordinator at any level. And you would want your quarterback to be there working with his rookie offensive coordinator, and he didn't. And people were at the time were like, what's the big deal? But I think it says something. Maybe he is finally becoming that executive that NFL owners would want their quarterback to be. The guy who is running a very business-like, as opposed to just being, dude bro who happens to sling a football 70 miles an hour.
I'm curious how many of Josh Allen's teammates and coaches and other people in the Buffalo Bills organization are attending this wedding or will be attending this wedding. Josh Allen, being his role as a team leader and just his personality, I seem to think he's kind of got to invite everybody. And that seems like an unruly
like we
guest
said,
list,
or maybe it's
nobody.
nobody. Maybe it's highly exclusive. I mean, we're going to, she's been in movies with major stars, Josh Brolin and Jeff Bridges and Brad Pitt. And that's just from the True Grit days. I mean, who does she invite? I mean, who's going to be at this wedding? I mean, or people that she happens to know in Hollywood that she's, maybe she hasn't worked with it. It's not obvious. I bet you we see this guest list. If everybody gets invited, or it could be 10 people on a secluded beach somewhere, and the helicopters are going to be looking for them all week around Malibu and Coronado and who knows where. The Santa Barbara wine region, San Francisco. I mean, he's from closer to San Francisco than LA. Maybe he gets married at Pebble Beach. Oh,
Do we think Stephon Diggs will get an invite?
probably not. Well, let's talk about that. Is it a story or not that he was on a boat passing out a pink substance to bikini-clad women while the New England Patriots were going through their OTAs? Stephon Diggs did not show up. He was at OTAs last week, but he was not at the voluntary workouts this week. And new head coach Mike Vrabel had to discuss it, and he didn't seem too pleased about it. He talked about making good decisions on and off the field. That's what he wants from his players. What are your thoughts on that is it a story?
I think Stefan Diggs not being at the OTA, and if that was his decision, and because maybe the Patriots told him to stay away because of the media scrutiny over this video. But if Stefan Diggs missed the practices, he's a new player on this team. He's coming off an injury. With his rehabilitation from the injury, maybe he's not going to be out there on the field, but he should probably be with the Patriots training staff and doing work with them and getting to know his teammates and
your young
showing up
quarterback
for the team. Yes.
Yeah.
And if that's what he's doing instead, that's a story. And it is definitely a story because of the attention, the interest it's got in. I don't know if what was going on that boat or what was in that bag or what color the substance was in the bag is as big of a story as it seems to have been in the way it was covered.
He could find himself getting that FedEx envelope that players get where it says you have to do a drug test. The NFL can do that based on evidence it sees out and about. I mean, a lot of time, like, there's a protocol for all the different drug tests, and I'm sure that there are some subtleties in place since the last time I poured over the collective bargaining agreement. But it used to be you needed to test positive to get in the tiered system of being monitored. You needed to really screw up or be arrested for something. But the NFL also can, with reasonable suspicion, I believe, just start testing you. You don't have to be caught red-handed or by a law enforcement agency or a medical agency. I think that the NFL, once it can apply plausible suspicion, and if he's holding on to something that they think, well, so Stefan Diggs might get the drug test. He might be asked to do it.
There's nothing in that video that, I guess it suggests, but there's nothing in that video that tells us that Stefan Diggs was using any of these substances.
Possession is still illegal.
Possession is illegal. That's why it looks almost worse this way, because it does appear.
And he's distributing it.
Exactly. I don't know if that's the case, but based on the video, it appears as if he's supplying this to the women in the video, and that's a bad look. And that's really the reason why a lot of these drug testing programs exist in professional sports, is not because it's all that bad or that the leagues and the teams care that much about what the players are doing recreation in their own time. It's how bad it looks from a public relations standpoint. And that's why the leagues don't want players getting caught and being seen doing these things in public.
Yeah, it's funny. You talk about the leagues and the PR aspect of it. The NBA famously doesn't test for marijuana for a reason. The NHL famously doesn't test for cocaine for a reason. And I asked Bill Daly about that, the deputy commissioner, back when I was doing that radio show in Toronto on TSN 1050. He was a guest for, I was the co-host with Dave Naylor, the main host. And Bill Daly was the guest, and drug testing was it was a hot topic at the time. I think it was being collectively bargained. I don't recall what it was, but I asked him, why don't you test for cocaine? And he didn't dodge the question, and he did, and he was just like, we just don't feel that is something that we need to do because we don't feel that that's a problem. And I think that the common sense understanding of why the NHL wouldn't test for cocaine is because they know so many of their players are using it, and so many of their players probably need it. It's a hard sport to get ready to play. It's similarly to the NBA, right? But for coming at it from different angles. NBA players want it to medicate, away from the court for this busy schedule that they have, this 82 game schedule. And the hockey players want their cocaine because they need to play 82 games. It's to get them, one of them's maybe before the game, the other one's when you're not playing. I mean, I know that you follow culture and all that stuff, sports culture. I don't know if maybe you've read any think pieces about NBA and weed and all that stuff, but that's kind of the sentiment.
I've read a lot about how the NBA instituted a lot of its drug testing policies and drug suspensions in the 80s and late 70s because how problematic it was, how many players were doing cocaine. And yeah, I think it was a problem that some players that were talented never reached their potential and were unreliable. But the bigger problem
is death.
Exactly. Well, right. And that played into it as well. The biggest problem for the NBA was the perception that all of the players are on cocaine and that they're not reaching their full potential as players because of this. And they had to kind of get that out of the league and have very strong anti-drug policies in order to really just kind of eradicate cocaine from the league. And they didn't need to really do that with marijuana and chose not to do it that way as the years went by.
Yeah, the NBA has always been known as a weed kind of sport, though, right? I mean, there's the late Cliff Robinson, Uncle Spliffy, from the Buffalo native who actually got into the weed business out in Portland after he was retired and before he died. But yeah, Uncle Spliffy, while he was playing, he was known as a big pothead.
Yeah, Bill Walton. He's spoken a lot about that and how, necessary a lot of NBA players found it was post game and for recovery and getting to sleep and things like that.
All right. So that's that was kind of a off ramp that we took there. We were talking about Bill's voluntary practices and then Stephon Diggs and then recreational drug use.
Yeah, I hope we didn't libel Haley Steinfeld at all in that conversation by linking those together.
Oh, no, I don't think so. I think we're okay. We didn't accuse anybody of anything. Joey Bosa's calf injury, that the least surprised of any of the updates that we heard from Sean McDermott on Tuesday was that Joey Bosa is hurt and that he might not be available until the start of training camp at St. John Fisher at the end of July. Is this here we go again? Is this another Von Miller situation where they bring in a guy who's, although Von Miller did have the previous knee injury, but he wasn't known for being injury plagued. But this is kind of the risk that you get with bringing in Joey Bosa. And he's missed a lot of games throughout his career for various things. And here he is hurt again. I don't know if you have any thoughts on how that impacts the Bills and their pass rush.
I'm just looking at a chart here, at least according to this, trying to count how many different body parts Joey Bosa has appeared on the injury report with. And I got maybe 9 or 10, and none of them are a calf. I think that's the problem with Joey Bosa is how injury prone he is. And he doesn't really have like a major knee injury or a major Achilles tear that makes him damaged goods in the way that some players are like that. But how often he gets injured all over his body just is worrisome from a Bills perspective, that he's a player who's breaking down or a player that just can't stand the rigors of a full season. I do wonder if the Bills are being a bit cautious here, that maybe it's not a major injury and holding him out of the spring practices is a way to keep him healthy. And I do think you'll see more of that with the Bills and Joey Bosa as the season goes along. But because of the suspensions on the defensive line and things like that, they might need him at the beginning of the season a bit more than they thought they would when they signed him.
Bills have 8 edge rushers right now on their roster. I will give them to you in numerical order. Gregory Rousseau, Hayden Harris, Michael Hoyt, Javon Solomon, AJ Epinesa, Paris Shand, Landon Jackson, Joey Bosa. They've obviously tried to supplement that with Hoyt, with Bosa, drafting Landon Jackson on the second day. We'll see how that shakes out. And we won't get to see Joey Bosa work until St. John Fisher. The Bandits three-peated. Just want to make a point. If that's the parade is this afternoon. We will miss that because we are recording this podcast on Friday afternoon. You were out there, Jonah. How was everybody talks about the electricity in the arena. This is a three-peat. This is getting to be routine. If you don't want to say old hat, but it's getting to be somewhat routine. Did this one feel any different than the others for you as covering it?
Well, different in the sense that the first one was not the first time for the Bandits, but the first in this era, this run, and the first that I had covered and been out on the field for, and that was unique and cool. And now it's happening again and again. So it feels a little bit, it still is exciting and fun. And I think everybody that was there really appreciated the moment, but it's also not as amazing as it was the first time, because it's happening over and over again. But still, as they have in their other closeout games the past 2 years, the Bandits blew the game wide open, and it was a celebration throughout the third and fourth quarter of the Bandits championship before the game was over with. And then just the experience of winning the championship on the home floor with a full building, and the fans stick around for the trophy presentation and the celebration and the confetti pouring from the ceiling. I'm sure the Bandits players would have loved to win the series in 2 games out in Saskatchewan, but I think for the fan base and the Banditland culture, and maybe after the fact, they realize that it is cooler winning at home than on the road, and it does make it a better experience. And there's other sports where that can happen, but in a lot of sports, you win the championship games or the playoff games on neutral sites, and the fans don't get to share in it in the same way. So I think it's fitting with the way the Bandits have this dedicated fan base, that they get to experience it with them and then spill over into the cobblestone bars and celebrate all throughout the night with the fans that were cheering them on.
The Buffalo Sabres would just like to experience a taste of the playoffs, let alone a Stanley Cup. And they made a move today. Hopefully, they think it's going to shore up their front office a little bit. And that's Jarmo Kekalainen, the former general manager of the Columbus Blue Jackets, is now senior advisor to Kevin Adams. Let me just quickly give his resume for those who maybe know of Kekalainen as a general manager, but what's this guy's background? He's going to be 59 in about a month, so he's not old for general manager. This isn't the type of guy that you'd look at and say, man, the game has passed him by. Like Lou Lamoriello, a lot of rumors about him. He was spotted in Buffalo, and whether or not he was spoken to about being the senior advisor that Kevin Adams brought in. But this is a guy who is just steeped in scouting and executive work, which is something that Kevin Adams, quite frankly, didn't do. I mean, yes, he had a year or two in hockey operations with the Sabres. He was an assistant to Lindy Ruff briefly, but he kind of cut to the front of the line when it came to being a general manager. He didn't do all those big scouting trips or, spend weekends in Moose Jaw. So Jarmo Kekalainen, after his work in Finland, was the Ottawa Senators Director of Player Personnel from 1999 to 2002. He then became the St. Louis Blues Director of Amateur Scouting from 2002 to 2005. And then he was promoted to assistant general manager in St. Louis from 2005 to 2010. He then went back to Finland and was the general manager of Jokerit, which is one of their top organizations there, from 2010 to 2013. And then from 2013 to 2024, he was the Blue Jackets general manager. And the reason I wanted to lay out his experience and his age is we've discussed on this show, Jonah, that our skepticism, because he hasn't throughout his tenure as Sabres general manager. Kevin Adams has not really hired anybody or had worked with anybody who could be considered a threat to him. And I'm not saying that Kekalainen is, lurking and waiting to pounce, but this is a guy who should be challenging the thought process of Terry Pegula, of Kevin Adams, of Jason Karmanos, even of Lindy Ruff. Let's work on things. I mean, that's the possibility. That's the potential of having somebody like Jarmo Kekalainen come in, and not somebody who's at the end of his career. This guy was just a general manager a year ago and is only he's currently 58. So this is a guy who's not done, I wouldn't think. And so you could be looking potentially at the Buffalo Sabres next general manager. And I didn't think that Kevin Adams would frankly bring in a type of guy who could do that. So I guess kudos to him for his willingness to work with somebody who actually has this kind of cachet.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a good addition to the Sabres front office. It's something Kevin Adams probably should have done almost immediately or earlier in his general manager tenure. As far as bringing someone in who's a threat to Kevin Adams, I think anybody that has experience and takes on the role of senior advisor probably would have looked like, a potential general manager replacement. I do think,
But as somebody, the point, just to refine it a little bit, like a Lou Lamoriello, just using that name. I mean, he's old. Like he's probably done. Doug McClain is a name. He was talked to back when Kevin Adams first became general manager as a possible senior advisor. Doug McClain would be the classic senior advisor, probably never to be a general manager or otherwise director of anything ever. Or Rick Dudley, guys who are at the tail end of their careers is what I would have assumed would have been coming in. Somebody who's a little more toothless than Jarmo Kekalainen.
yeah, well, my read is that because Kevin Adams took a while to make this hire and seemed to have talked to a number of different people and evaluated the strengths and weaknesses or went through a list of candidates and found someone who was willing to take the job. Maybe some of these other people weren't as willing to do it. That he chose somebody that fits the experience profile and helps his front office, but probably he doesn't perceive as a major threat to work behind his back and to try to get him fired. This is somebody that's going to help Kevin Adams and the Sabres succeed. And if the Sabres win games and go to the playoffs next year, there's going to be no change to the general manager. The change is only going to come if the Sabres continue to lose and, are at the bottom of the standings again, as they have been this past season, for much of this past season. So I say kudos to Kevin Adams for adding this type of experience to the front office. I don't know if they've had a general manager with this much experience since John Muckler. So it's been a long time since the Sabres have had anybody with previous general manager experience or could bring in that fresh set of eyes and know how things work around the league in the way that this hire will. But as far as, is this somebody that's going to be the next general manager after Kevin Adams? Remains to be seen. And I kind of don't think that Kevin Adams thinks that's going to be the case. And I think he found threaded the needle of somebody who brings experience and helps the front office, but isn't going to be working behind the scenes to, make a change in the top chair.
Right. And candidly, we don't know exactly how this dynamic is going to work. Maybe Jarmo Kekalainen stays in Finland and spends very little time. Maybe this is a phone, this is a remote office that Jarmo Kekalainen is going to keep, and maybe he does, stays over in Europe and look, there's also the Rasmus Dahlin aspect of this, a guy who is going to make sure Rasmus Dahlin doesn't get too frustrated because Kekalainen is a Finn. I'm sorry, I got my guy. That's an offensive thing I just said, right? Confusing my Finns and my Swedes. But you do have somebody with the European background who understands the European player and what they need and what they go through, and he is just he has an international presence to him regarding credibility, which is something that I think players are frustrated and have been at the direction of the program. And this is, I keep using the word cachet, but that's it's gravitas. I think that's the word I'm looking for. It adds a significant amount of gravitas to the Bills or to the Sabres front office.
And the big question is, can Kekalainen help Kevin Adams solve his biggest problem, which isn't maybe not entirely Kevin Adams' fault, but is getting top players to either sign with the Sabres in free agency or be willing to be traded to the Sabres. And that, that's really been a major roadblock the past couple of seasons. And when Kevin Adams has tried to make a big swing or add a big time player to the roster, he just is not able to do that. And can a experienced front office executive who's been a general manager before convince any of these players or their agents to view Buffalo in a different light than they have been over the past number of years?
Yeah, this is a guy who, like I said, he was 2013 to 2024 was the general manager of the Columbus Blue Jackets. This man has negotiated contracts. He has made trades. He has fielded, all the trades he probably that he hasn't made. Add those up, and from that standpoint alone, Kevin Adams, can have that amount of experience and expertise on how to handle and navigate things that have made Sabres fans nervous at different times. Going into free agency under Kevin Adams, Sabres fans are nervous. Going into the trade deadline under Kevin Adams, Sabres fans are nervous. They just have an impression that he is going to get fleeced, or that he isn't going to be able to get it done because he doesn't know how. The comments about the palm trees and taxes, that was Kevin Adams essentially throwing up his hands and saying, I haven't been able to figure it out. I know that these are our circumstances that we're dealing with, but you guys need to understand, I can't do it. Well, here's a guy who has done it. Columbus is no dynasty. Columbus, because it was newer, there was some sort of appeal to Columbus because of their facilities, their new barn, the fact that the fans were rabid. But Columbus is no destination for hockey. And so he's dealt with some of that. And, hopefully for Sabres fans, this is somebody who helps fix things instead of just, is one more move that comes off as flaccid.
Right. With Kevin Adams' tenure with the Sabres, if you go move by move, trade by trade, draft pick by draft pick, I think he's had more hits than misses. He's hasn't really been fleeced on too many trades. If he hasn't been a big winner on a lot of the trades, I think some of them have worked out well.
It's the guys who go win somewhere else, of course. The Jack Eichel trade, it was that was a decision. Maybe if the Sabres would have let him have his surgery, then Kevin Adams wouldn't have needed to make that trade. But did they win that trade? I mean, anyways, I don't want to get tit for tat on all of them. But yeah, there've been a lot of moves that hurt, or the moves that aren't made, the moves that the inactivity at critical times when Sabres fans and the team seem to be begging for an injection of some kind, and Kevin Adams is paralyzed by whether it's for whatever reason, whether it's he's not allowed to spend the money, or he doesn't know how to pull off the move, or he's wrong and just says, we don't need to make the move. Those are the things I think that have really added to his reputation here in Buffalo as somebody who can't get it done. So, but I'm sorry.
Well, right. That's where I was going. It's the negative space. It's the moves that haven't happened, the trades that haven't happened, or the acquisitions, or the misreads on how to develop players and when to call them up and things like that. And an experienced general manager should be able to help advise Kevin Adams on that. I don't know how much of a difference it'll make, but it's a plus, not a minus, I think, adding this to the Sabres masthead, if you will.
And having been in multiple organizations, 3 NHL organizations, this will be his 4th. So there's there's a spectrum of different ideas that he's been exposed to. And then, of course, the European game, which he's heavily involved in, the Finnish national team and whatever. And George Richards is going to tell us more about that when he joins us here shortly.
And the Sabres have some big decisions to make coming up with restricted free agents and Alex Tuch's extension coming due, and some cap room that they have, but maybe it'll get used up by these extensions, and having another, trusted member of the brain trust should be able to, or you would hope would be able to help the Sabres make the right decisions on some of these big decisions that they have.
Jonah, is there anything else we want to talk about before George Richards joins us?
Just kind of acknowledge, if anybody is paying attention or interested in doing this, the Para Ice Hockey World Championships going on here in Buffalo and reaching the semifinals today, and gold medal, bronze medal games on Saturday at Harbor Center. Nick Sabato had a nice story in the Niagara Gazette about a Team USA player, Declan Farmer, who, the basis of the story might be the best hockey player in the world. Sled hockey, ice hockey, any form of hockey, street hockey, roller hockey, tonsil hockey. And he's, as accomplished in this sport as anybody in the NHL is. And, this is high level competition, especially when you get to the World Championship gold medal game. Team USA has been rolling through this tournament so far. We'll see if that continues in the medal round. But it's happening right here in our backyard. And, tonight you could go to the Bandits rally, catch some of those hockey games. The Pisons are in town. There's a lot going on in that downtown sports complex. It doesn't include a soccer stadium quite yet, but it has a lot going on without that.
And it's a perfect time because there's nothing to watch on TV tonight. The Stanley Cup final is set. We're going to talk to George Richards about that too, because he covers the Florida Panthers. So the Panthers are going to rematch against the Oilers, and the NBA tournament is paused. There's no game tonight because Oklahoma City is advanced and the Knicks just won last night. So there's nothing going on. So get out and do something in Buffalo. All right, let's take a break. And then we come back. I'm going to talk to George Richards, as promised, on Tim Graham and Friends, brought to you by CTBK, CPAs, and Business Consultants.
The financial needs of a business go beyond tax and attest services. That's why CTBK goes beyond accounting services and offers outsourced solutions for their affiliation with CFO Solutions Plus. These additional services allow clients to focus on their operational and long-term strategic goals. Trust CTBK's outsourced solutions to provide cost-effective, value-added financial services tailored to your company's needs. Call CTBK at 716-630-2400. Again, 716-630-2400. Or go to ctbk.com to learn more about CTBK's outsourced solutions.
Hey, it's your boy Pharrell. I'm a huge fan of Tim Graham and Friends. Then again, who isn't? Shake it, ooh.
As promised on Tim Graham and Friends, brought to you by CTBK, we are joined by the legend, George Richards from Florida Hockey Now, longtime NHL reporter with the Miami Herald, with the Columbus Dispatch. And that's a great little twist there, because we're going to talk not only about the Florida Panthers returning to the Stanley Cup final, but also the Sabres and their move today, hiring former Blue Jackets general manager Jarmo Kekalainen to be senior advisor to Kevin Adams. And George covered Jarmo in Columbus. George, thanks for fitting in some time. I know you're busy. I know you got to get to the Marlins game.
Yeah.
I would also be remiss as to mention George Richards also covered the Panthers for The Athletic. So how long have you been covering the Panthers?
Boy, it's been since I took over the lockout year, so 2004, so 21 years.
Were you on the beat for the lockout?
Yes.
So that
with Mike Keenan as the new general manager, Jacques Martin as the new head coach, and a rookie beat writer, and it was a lot of fun.
All right, my apologies to the audience here because they want to hear George's thoughts on Kekalainen, but
we'll get to Jarmo.
Sorry, professional detour here. We do have a lot of people who comment when we talk journalism; they really like it. What was it like to go from, you were high schools and colleges at the Miami Herald,
right,
to go to the Panthers beat, but during a lockout? You're not covering games, you're covering the business. You had to cover the league. You weren't even really covering the Panthers at the time.
Right.
What was that like? Because I was also covering the Sabres at that time, but I'd had 3 seasons of hockey. Right. I knew many of the people, but to be able to be thrown in the deep end like that had to be trial by fire.
It really was, because this was back in the good old newspaper day where we had a Sunday hockey column, rain, sleet or shine, so there was no news. I mean, it was, we were writing about labor disputes, and, you had all those guys playing in the minor leagues, and I was writing about that. The Panthers had contracts that were coming due, and we didn't know how all that was going to happen. And here I am, I'm trying to figure out restricted free agency, unrestricted free agency. So quick story, Roberto Luongo is a restricted free agent. And so I call up Mike Keenan, who's the general manager of the Panthers, and I start talking. I was like, hey, is there any concern with Roberto Luongo? And I hadn't, I didn't know restricted, unrestricted. And he's like, yeah, it's a concern. So I write a story that Roberto Luongo may have played his final game as a Panther because, he's a free agent. And Keenan just let me go with it. And it was like baptism by fire. I will never forget the difference between a restricted free agent and an unrestricted free agent again.
Who knows, though? Maybe Roberto Luongo goes and plays in Europe, which a lot of those guys were doing at the time, and doesn't come
Right.
back. Like, that was the fear, especially in a small market like Buffalo. What if these guys go off and decide they don't want to be in the
They don't want to
NHL
be back.
anymore
Right.
after the NHL burned them for a year of salary?
Like Olli Jokinen back then. What if he goes back to Finland and plays, but that didn't happen. So, but it was fun. And Jacques Martin, let me give him a lot of credit. Jacques Martin was a professor. He was in the teaching profession before he became an NHL coach with the Ottawa Senators. And he had two newbies on the Florida Panther beat. This is when 3 newspapers covered the team. Palm Beach Post had the veteran Brian Begain,
native Western New Yorker.
Michael Russo took off. So you had Steve Gorton, who was like me, came over from the colleges and the high schools, and myself. So Jacques Martin
heated competition,
and everything was boom, boom, boom. Jacques Martin, hey, don't that's a nothing burger, that kind of thing. He taught us, in those first couple of years what to look for, how to basically cover hockey. The first couple of years was an education, and Brian Begain, very helpful, Palm Beach Post, longtime hockey writer, helpful as well. But for both myself and Steve Gorton, that was big, coming on a beat like that, fresh in the middle of the labor dispute. It wasn't easy.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever asked you about that, and I've known you since then. But yeah,
and during the lockout, I'm competing with Michael Russo. He stayed at the Sentinel through the lockout, so he's getting all these scoops from people I've never even heard of, from the league office or an assistant GM with the Anaheim. I'm like, what am I doing here? So it was rough at times for sure.
Well, it turned out all right for you. You are the encyclopedia of Panthers coverage, the go-to guy at Florida Hockey Now, and happy for the run that you're on. Not that you care per se about winning or losing, but when you run your own website, winning helps, right. I'm sure. And it's also
good for content, right? Every round gets you 2 weeks of content.
Right. And also just, it's fun to cover a winner when you've covered a franchise like the Panthers that was just a perennial doormat. Is this ever going to work? I mean, not that long ago, and it was like that for the Tampa Bay Lightning for a while. It was like that for Carolina. But as long as there's a Phoenix in the league, you can look to see what it could be like. Oh my God, I hope I'm not covering a team that the NHL just abandons or has to move, whatever. I mean,
and listen, and I get, when Gary Bettman steps on the ice, in a northern market, I get why he's booed. But for Gary Bettman to get booed in South Florida or Tampa, it makes no sense. He worked so hard to keep this thing going. When you would see, the Ottawa, on Tuesday night against Ottawa, there would legitimately be 5,000 people in the building, and those pictures are circulating, and it was like, whoa, this thing just is not looking good. And Bettman was like, nope, it's a good market. This team has stunk for so long. You remember, they went 12 years without.
It was a Sabres home game for the first probably probably the entire time I covered the National Hockey League, because I stopped in 2007 when I moved down to the Palm Beach Post, when we actually saw each other more when I was covering football down there, and nights at the quarter deck, and
the quarter deck or the Flanagans.
Yes. But yeah, they were all Sabres home games, and I'm sure it was like that for any northern team.
Every team,
the Rangers, or right. Maybe even the Devils brought fans out to see the Panthers play in Sunrise. But totally different now.
Yeah.
But let's talk about Jarmo Kekalainen, and then we'll talk about the final series, the rematch against the Oilers, which was the series I'm rooting for, because number one, I'm a fan of George Richards, and I want George to go as deep into the playoffs as he can. And I think Florida as a winner is a good story, because it is we're talking about what they just went through, or what they've gone through generationally as a franchise. I just like the NHL having stronger footholds in their markets. I would probably want Phoenix, if they were still there, and now Salt Lake City, to at some point experience some traction I think it's good for sports. It's good for the business. And then also anytime you can watch Connor McDavid over a series, when you're settling in and that's all that's on, and you get to watch Connor McDavid not competing with other games in the earlier rounds, you might see Connor McDavid 3 out of those 5 or 6 games or 7 games when they only go one round. Now they're, screw it. Let's just keep talking about this series. We can't.
Now the spotlight's on, right? I mean, this
Yeah.
is for sure.
So tell me about this matchup as you see it, and how different is it from last year?
It's definitely different because now you've got an Edmonton Oilers team that's experienced the pain of loss, right? I mean, that was a thing that I don't know how many people watched that prime series, the documentary that they did during the Stanley Cup Finals. It didn't come out, I don't think, until September or October, but they were right behind the scenes. Game 7, when the NHL PR person comes to the visiting locker room door in Sunrise and says, "Hey, we need Connor. He won the Conn Smythe," and they're like, "No, he ain't coming." And then you just see the tears and the emotion and all that. Listen, when Edmonton came to South Florida to play the Panthers or in the regular season, they did the morning skate out. They came to the arena, one of the few teams to come to the arena for their morning skate. Everybody's been going to Florida, the Panthers' new place in Fort Lauderdale. I think Edmonton did that to get over it, right? Just, this is the same building. This is the same place you were sitting here crying, the same paint, all that stuff. Get it out of your head. We're here. We're playing a game. That's the end of it. But they're also a better team. I mean, you look at Stuart Skinner, the way he has played lately. Earlier in the playoffs, you didn't know what you were going to get from Skinner, right? He was going to give up 5 or he was going to give up none, one of the two. And now he's settled in. He's playing extremely well. The Edmonton Oilers, since going down 0-2 to the LA Kings, are 12-2 in the playoffs. They are playing phenomenal hockey right now. So, and they've got home ice. That's something they didn't have last year. Listen, Florida's battle tested. They've been through this. This is their 3rd straight run to the final. And Florida might have added some pieces to make them better. This is going to be a whale of a series just because it's, nothing is going to get like the storylines. If Florida goes up 3-0 again, which nobody expects, you know what the storyline's going to be. Edmonton came back from 3-0 last year. If Florida's down 2-1, does it matter? I mean, it's going to be exciting all the way. I don't think we're going to know who wins this series until that final whistle, like last year. Game 7, it was 2-1. They had 50 seconds left with nobody in the net, down 2-1, and Edmonton, I don't think, touched the puck. So, just one of those kind of deals where Florida was able to clamp down and get a win. Can they do it again? We'll find out.
What moment, or maybe there's a couple of moments, stand out to you regarding the Panthers this season and whatever their identity is, whatever their vibe is for 2014, 2025, that, obviously has to be different than last year, even though it's the same organization and they're the defending champs. Things change year to year and your identity changes even within a dynasty, right? The year to year identity changes. What to you makes this team's identity for this season? Or maybe even you want to say, because it is a long season, the season started, forever ago, maybe of the postseason. What has this team become that maybe it wasn't when the season began?
Well, they're not fun to play against, right? We all know that. You see the way that the Panthers play. I mean, that's what everybody aspires to. To play playoff hockey is how the Panthers play it. And I think that there's going to be a lot of coaches, and it's probably already started, coaches and general managers watching film of the Panthers to try to replicate what they do because it works in the postseason. But it's hard to play in the regular season because you're playing a Wednesday night in Detroit. You don't have, you may not be going full bore because it's just a tough way to go. And Paul Maurice understands that. That's why he rarely got mad when the Panthers would lose. It was just one of those things where they weren't going through the motions during the regular season, but they didn't put any weight into it. It was just, let's be healthy. We know the style of game we play. And you saw it a few times in the regular season when the Panthers were motivated, they could play that. When they weren't motivated, they probably lose 4-2. But since the start of the playoffs, that first game in Tampa Bay, when everybody was questioning Florida because they did not finish the regular season strong,
right?
A lot of the pundits were saying, "Oh boy, this is Tampa. Tampa's going to," and Florida just came out and put a fist in Tampa's jaw. Takes the first two games in it, at Amalie in Tampa, and they're off and running. So. And you see it sometimes when the Panthers have closeout games, they kind of lose that edge because they know, hey, we're up 3-0, we're up 3-1, and you don't really see that style. But when they bring it hard.
What are your thoughts on Jarmo Kekalainen as the Sabres advisor?
Actually,
let's stop there because you don't know what the hell, that's what, just tell me about your experience covering Jarmo Kekalainen and what kind of guy he is.
He's a terrific guy. Made his bones in scouting. I believe he was an agent back in his earlier years, working with European players. First European-born GM in NHL history with the Columbus Blue Jackets. Worked very closely with John Davidson there. But yeah, he's a terrific scout. He's got a terrific eye for talent. I think that things just ran their course in Columbus, which is why he was looking for a job. I mean, that was just, going to be a rebuild, and they decided to go in a different direction. Sorry, I'm getting text messages here. I have to keep flipping.
You're a busy fella.
Yeah, well, you know how it goes. Jarmo's a terrific hockey mind. I think he really knows how to build things up, and he's going to be a great asset to Kevin Adams. I was really excited to see that and he's got the experience. I mean, he did it for a long time in Columbus, dealt with the business side of things, dealt with the scouting side of things. His brother, Jari Kekalainen, was the Florida Panthers head European scout for years. In fact, he's the guy that talked Dale Talon into drafting Sasha Barkov second overall in 2013, which was, it kind of worked out for the Panthers. So Jarmo's going to work out well, working with Kevin Adams. You got Eric Stahl, right? Joining the organization is
entry-level job for Eric. I think that,
but he can relate to players and he can work. I mean, look at the Florida Panthers front office. It's all former GMs, some up-and-coming assistant GMs in that front office, and some former players. Gregory Campbell, Roberto Luongo, Sean Thornton is on the business side for the Panthers, Brian McCabe. So you have a lot of former players in the Florida Panther front office with a bunch of Florida, front office people, like from Buffalo. I can't think of his name. Longtime GM in the Rick Dudley.
Oh yeah,
is an assistant general manager. Well, he's a senior advisor. So, and they all work together. So if Kevin Adams is really bringing in these people to help collaborate and help him, that's great. And I don't think Jarmo is doing this just for a job. I think he's coming in to really kind of help mold things, work through the draft, work through free agency, and then when the season starts, the building of the roster.
One of the things that Jonah Bronstein and I touched on was the concept and the belief from people I've spoken with. So it wasn't like we were just pulling this out of the air or wondering or just asking or mentioning it rhetorically, but through his tenure with the Buffalo Sabres, Kevin Adams has made it a point not to have people around who would be a threat to his existence as a general manager. And that's not to say that this is ominous, but the surprise for me is that the Sabres actually brought in somebody who, I mean, and maybe you could even say a Lou Lamoriello or somebody who is kind of done, because maybe they're just around as the senior advisor and that's all they're ever going to be. A Doug McClain, somebody like that. Whereas Jarmo Kekalainen's fresh off of being a general manager. He could be a general manager again. So that was the surprise to me, and a pleasant surprise for Sabres fans who've been desperate for something like this. It was a pleasant surprise to me that somebody who was just a general manager as recently as last year is now in this role, because you could actually fathom this guy being the next general manager of the Buffalo Sabres.
And I think we see that in sports a lot where guys don't want to, and that just shows that they're insecure in their job position. It shows that the heat is on. And if that's the case, they're out of there anyway, because those jobs, that never works out. If you're just bringing in yes men and just people to surround you, and that is never going to work. It never has worked. So I think that's a good first step, because Jarmo is a very smart hockey person. Again, has done the job for a long time. Jarmo had Bill Zito as his assistant GM, and he wasn't afraid to let Bill do more things. He wasn't afraid that Bill was going to take his job. If he did, then Bill would have never gotten, good at those kind of things. And, nobody wants to work for a guy like that. So that's why I'm saying Yarmo's not coming there to be a yes man. He could have gotten a job like this, right? Even here in Florida. Yeah. Bill Zito probably would have hired Jarmo if that's what it took just to get back into the league. He's coming with the idea that it's going to be, I'm going to be a part of this, and we're going to build this together, and that's big.
George, anything about him that I didn't ask you about that you think is germane?
You guys are probably going to get better coffee. You guys have pretty good coffee in Buffalo. I got to take that back, but Jarmo is a coffee connoisseur. He's got the big, the $10,000 coffee machine in his office.
All right.
Ask Jarmo when you see him. Hey, can we get some coffee? And he'll swoop you right up to the office. And
all right, let's do. Okay, it's a good tip. I wish you wouldn't have said that publicly, so that way I could keep that to myself. But this is where you get exclusive content. So I guess I can't be too upset about it. George, I know you got to get to the ball yard.
Is Tim Hortons a sponsor of yours?
No, Tim Hortons is not a sponsor, but Tim Hortons is in the press box, I believe, at the very good. The old logo too.
No, you guys have, Buffalo's got great, you guys got it good, man. You got good press food. You've got the snacks upstairs in the press box. You got good coffee. You got it good. You got it cooking.
Enjoy the final, and we'll touch base again. But it's great. It's perfect timing. I was going to talk to you at some point regarding the final, especially with it getting heated and busy. I thought it's a perfect time to reach out now. And then the Kekalainen news today, made it a no-brainer. So thank you.
I'm glad you did. It was good seeing you as always. And thanks for having me, Thanks,
George. Oh, one last quick. I'm sorry. I know I told you.
I'm good.
You are at George Richards on Twitter. And you joined in April 2009, which is not right away. It's right. But how did you get George Richards?
Okay. So I originally, when I signed up, I had a blog at the Miami Herald called On Frozen Pond. My original Twitter handle was at On Frozen Pond. But then I signed up and I got the George Richards.
It was available?
It was available. Or I had to wait. One day it was available and I took it, and then I just switched the two accounts. And so
On Frozen Pond.
Not a great story.
But it was an On Frozen Pond mention, which should always be mentioned because it was a legendary NHL blog.
Yeah. That was where we used to have, that's where, it was, ripping on the Panthers for all their missteps.
Yes. That was a lot of fun.
Stuff that I couldn't get into the Miami Herald went on Frozen Pond. And it was like, here they go again with another $1 coupon for,
I loved it.
Buy one, get 5 free tickets. Only at the Panther game.
George, enjoyed the series. Good luck to Florida Hockey Now for the series. Generate a lot of traffic, and we'll be seeing you. Any plans to come up here?
Maybe in August.
Okay. Good.
I hope to be up in August. Come see you guys.
Is it for an unspoken milestone or something that might? Are you?
No.
All right, well, I'll leave that. There's nothing. Okay.
Summertime.
And I'll leave it at that. I'm sorry to be vague or cryptic, but
is there a milestone I need to know about?
We'll discuss off camera.
All right. Send me a text.
All right, man. George, thank you for this.
Thank you, Timmy. Be good, brother.
Thank you.